Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me today. Today I want to talk a little bit about connectivity and collaboration in the advertising ecosystem and across the open web. I think if we take one thing from the last 6-7 months due to the global pandemic is, how important actually connectivity is and how the internet plays a major role in that connectivity. We've used the internet to connect with our friends and family, to stay in touch. We've used the internet to connect with our colleagues, to undertake our work. We've used the internet for our retail and shopping requirements. And we've spent more time than ever using the internet for our leisure time, whether it's keeping up to date with news or whether it's using it to consume entertainment and media. So connectivity, is really touches everyone's life, and the internet plays a very large part of that. So what I want to talk about today is the future of the connected internet. We strongly believe that advertising technology will remain connected. It will be people-based, privacy first, and open to all. Before I go into that, let's have a quick recap on the headwinds that the industry is experiencing and the current challenges that we're all operating within. We have privacy regulations. So in Europe, we've been working with GDPR for a number of years now. Early this year, the US introduced CCPA in California, and other countries and territories are coming to the market with their own privacy regulations, like Brazil, for instance. But I'm sure we'll see more globally as all the different countries start to put in place their own regulations. Cookie deprecation. So, with iOS, we've been living in an ecosystem without third-party cookies for close to 5 years now. It's not a new phenomenon. But however, Firefox joining suit with that recently this year, and Chrome announcing that in the near future they will also be removing third-party cookies. And then, of course, most recent, the news around iOS and the stronger regulations they're going to place around the IDFA across their platforms. And more importantly, let's not forget the role that the walled gardens play. They find themselves in a very unique situation at present, where not only are they relying on advertising revenue and they have large content consumption across the internet, they also find themselves as gatekeepers of the internet. And some of the decisions they're making and the massive impact that has on the open internet, where perhaps it doesn't have the same impacts across their own business, which is kind of creating a divide or an unfair advantage, some would say, and causing problems across the open internet. All these headwinds cause, disconnect in data, disconnect in consent management, and disconnect across the internet today. It's leading to a divide. So if you were to believe all of the headlines that we've seen this year, that independent advertising technology doesn't have a place moving forward, and the open internet is seriously a concern of the future of the open internet. The headlines have been quite bold, looking at the worst case scenario. However, at Lotame, we believe that now is more important than ever of independent advertising technology, but also more important than ever is the open internet. We believe today is time to tack into those headwinds, feel the sails, and actually work through collaboration through the open internet and the different players to actually build a better internet for the future, not only for all the businesses that rely on it, but also for the end consumer, more importantly. It's time to change. So as I said, we believe advertising technology, the future is connected, it's people-based, it's privacy first, and it's open to all. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at people-based. So what do I mean by people-based? I mean treating people as people, having conversations with people as an individual, and understanding people's needs and requirements and why they are visiting your property and why they're actually consuming your content. So having people-first conversations, speaking to people as people. Devices are not people. The ecosystem today and up until today has heavily relied on the concept of IDs and looked at people as multiple disparate devices, whether that's cookie-based IDs, whether that's first or third-party cookies, whether that's mobile advertising IDs, iOS or Android advertising IDs, or even OTT IDs and connected TVs. You know, we've very much worked in an ecosystem where we've transacted on data and transported data between our organizations through the ad tech industry, really heavily reliant on these IDs, and it's kind of led to where we are today and some of the decisions that's being made. So problem with IDs is you only really get partial picture of your consumers and your potential consumers, your potential customers. You only really get half of what they're interested in. You don't get a full view of those consumers. You can't have the in-depth conversations that's required to treat consumers as people, not as device IDs. So Lotame strongly believes and has invested a lot into what we call people-based identity. We believe in people-based identity, and we believe it's the future. Last week we launched our Panoramic ID, which is our people-based ID that's open to all, open to the internet. It's an ID that clusters multiple devices, multiple IDs down to an individual view, to being able to have those people-based conversations. So whether that's a first-party cookie, whether that's an Android ID, Android advertising ID, or whether that's Apple's IDs, to actually group them together, the IDFA or the IDFV, to actually get a people-based panoramic view of your audience. So what do we mean by that? So there's been a lot of headlines and a lot of heated conversation around what's going to replace the third-party cookie. How are we going to do identity? Do we do identity moving forward? Lotame is a strong believer that actually you're going to need a portfolio of identity to be able to undertake what we need to do today, but also what we need to do into the future to improve. So let's take a look at the different concepts and how we can bring them together as a portfolio of solutions to actually create a panoramic view of your user. So let's take first-party data view on a first-party cookie on a single domain. Let's say a user comes to a publisher's website and browses the property listings. Let's say a user comes to a brand marketer's website and takes a look at the latest face cream, etc. Now, it's very valuable, and it's a very valuable source of data that definitely needs to be collected and should be harnessed. But again, because it's locked to that domain, you're really only looking at a very narrow view of that consumer. So you still can't have the in-depth conversation. You don't know why they're looking at a property listing, or you don't know what's driven them, their interest to that face cream. Then you got the authenticated web. I mentioned earlier, obviously, you know, the walled gardens sit at an unfair advantage because they have close to 100% generally of their user base authenticated. However, authentication is still a valuable tool to the rest of the internet, to the open internet, whether that's publishers gaining subscription based, or whether that's email newsletter subscriptions, whether that's checkout and retail subscriptions, whether that's just generally someone leaving their details, their authentication with your business to get the latest product information or the latest product that's coming out. So that expands the view of your customers and your customer, but it's still not getting you 100% view. There's still an area that's unknown because we're still mainly dealing with first-party data, even if you are bringing in your authenticated view from external tech platforms, advertising platforms, or partnerships. So we believe the last piece of that picture is to add IDs. It's to add the rest of the internet through some kind of people-based identity, whether that's from the likes of Lotame's Panorama ID or whether that's from other ad tech vendors. We feel the combination of all three, collecting your first-party data, using first-party cookies, adding authentication, email registration, then adding IDs through a probabilistic people-based identity solution, gets you that complete panoramic view of your customer and enables you to have those one-on-one conversations and treat customers as individuals. So it's people-based. So as we say, we believe the future is connected, it's people-based, it's privacy first and open to all. So we discussed people-based, so let's take a look at privacy first. So I think we'd all be in agreement that privacy is a good thing for the internet. It's an individual's right is to be able to have a transparent, open conversation of how their data is being used, and the right to actually consent or withdraw consent from any organization. I think the remaining question is today, however, who's responsible for privacy? Who's the gatekeeper of privacy on the internet? You know, there's been a lot of headlines around the browsers, but I think if you look at GDPR, which is coming into its maturity, it's probably the most mature to date privacy regulation, puts the gatekeeper and the ownership of data very much at the individual. It's the individual's right to be able to have full control over their online data in a transparent, open conversation with who they decide to give consent to, or who they decide to remove consent from the use of that data. However, with the current ecosystem changes and on some browsers already in place, there's actually a blockage in between that consumer, that individual, that user, and their chosen publication or brand where they're deciding to have that conversation with. There's a block in the way for them to be able to say, I want to give my data to this organization, or I don't want to give my data to this organization. And so there's actually a block in the way for that consumer's rights to actually authorize how their data should be treated with who they want their data to be treated. We don't believe this is privacy friendly or privacy compliant. If you look at going back, that it's the individual's right. So what do I mean by this? So we've all seen this. You go to your favorite website, up comes the consent management, and you decide, yes, I'd like to give consent. So you click to give consent to that publication or that brand for the use of your data. However, you go back one day later on a browser that today is blocking third-party cookies and with an organization that doesn't have 100% authentication to be able to recognize that users visited and already give their consent signals. And again the next day, and again, and again, and again. So without holding persistence at an individual, at a user on the internet, it's actually bad for privacy compliancy. You have to have the same conversation over and over again, and more so if they're visiting your properties on disparate devices. So people are opting out, choices getting deleted. They're opting out again, choices not getting translated again to other devices. Not only is it bad for privacy, it's also a very bad consumer experience. So we believe consent should work the way consumers think it does. And what do I mean by that? Again, treating people as people, not as devices, not as IDs. So improving the consumer experience by holding some kind of persistency against their consent choices. So it's understanding that user on Monday has given the consent and not having to ask them again on Wednesday. It's treating a user as an individual and making sure when you see him later on a different device, again, that you understand that user's already been to your properties and they've given consent or they've taken away consent from you. So it's holding that persistency and creating a better customer experience across your digital touch points. We believe that is more appropriate to an individual's consent right, treating consumers as consumers. So consent should work the way consumers think it does at the people level, not disjointed, not interfered with by gatekeepers of the internet. So again, we feel the internet's future is connected, people-based, it's privacy first, and it's open to all. So we covered people-based, we covered privacy first. So what do we mean by open to all? What is an open internet? What is open to all? I think this quote for me sums it up very well. An open web is a web by and for all its users, not select gatekeepers or governments. And I think if you look at the heart of that statement, you know, the internet is a place that we should all be able to thrive. You know, walled gardens get identity. Everyone else who plays in that ecosystem should have a fairer playing field to also be able to have the conversations with their customers and have consent and privacy built through their products uninterrupted. You know, we've got a choice moving forward whether we have an open internet for all or whether we create more walled gardens and a more disconnected internet that generally will lead to a bad consumer experience across the board, even within your singular properties, by not putting people at the heart of the product. So do we want an internet for the few, for the select? Do we want a part authenticated internet where only a few can play with good consumer experience and managing consent the way that consent should be managed? Or do we want an open internet for all, privacy first, connected ecosystem where we put the consumer and their consent signals at the heart of that ecosystem? So again, lastly, we believe the future of the open internet is connected, it's people-based, and it's privacy first, and it's open to all. Just want to thank you for listening to me today, and of course I'm available for any questions that you might have. Thank you.